Hi, my name is Paula Rooney. I'm a senior writer at CIO. And today we have a distinguished panel of guests in our CIO community who are going to help us talk through some of the issues related to cloud costs. So at this point, I'd love for our panelists to introduce themselves and their titles. Thank you.
I'll go first. I'm Craig Williams. I'm CDIO at a company called Ciena.
Yeah, I'm Vipul Nagrath. I'm at ADP. I'm a senior vice president and head of technology for one of our largest products in the company called the Workforce Now.
Hi, I am Ann Johnston. I'm the vice president for cloud evolution at Capital One. And part of my team's job is FinOps. I'm super excited to talk about our cloud costs.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us today. So let me just start with one of the biggest questions of the day, and that is, many organizations, and most organizations and enterprises, of course, are trying to reduce cloud costs, but particularly to shift more budget resources toward innovation projects such as machine learning, automation, and generative AI. So I'd like to ask you all to talk about how you are managing to do this, to have this fine balancing act of reducing cloud costs in 2024 to make room for this innovation.
So, look, I'll give you some operational things, tactical things we do on a daily basis. I actually get a daily report of my cloud spend. And I get to see how that is varied over time, how I'm comparing to the last 30 days, how I'm comparing to a previous quarter. So I'm actually literally right on top of my cloud costs on a daily basis. And on myself and a few others on my team, we look at that report on a very frequent basis. Quite frankly, though, we have a spectrum. We have certain things that we've had in the cloud that we've actually been running for years. And then there's brand new projects that we're implementing in the cloud today. And in that spectrum, the ones that we've been doing for years, we have the ability to get a little bit better in controlling our cloud costs and understanding how to optimize those. The things, of course, that we're doing brand new, we don't know yet. So we just basically take the leap of faith, move forward, start, and it's only after a period of observability and seeing how the services are being utilized is when we can actually then get in there and address those costs. So we're not going into it blindfolded, but we need to experiment before we actually go do the optimization.
I agree with Vipul on that. I think it's key to review the costs with the business units, the consumers. And it's a little different. We haven't done that in the data center before. So in the cloud stuff, you really got to do that and invest in that. You also have to be very close with your partners and the cloud providers themselves and making sure that we're looking at the right things and learning from their expertise. And I think like most of us are trying to do is you got to leverage multi-cloud as much as you can to make sure you've got the full perspective, that you don't get too tied to one and end up paying maybe more than you should.
And are there new platforms that you're using in 24 that have shown to be quite effective?
We personally just use what the cloud providers provide themselves in terms of that. Vipul, do you have something different that you guys use?
We actually do use data from the cloud providers, and then we actually feed that data into our Apptio system. So I get everything reported to me centrally in Apptio, but we're feeding in the data that we're getting from the cloud providers.
Great. And Ann, you're an expert in this, so I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, we were similar in that at the beginning of our cloud journey, our focus was on getting to the cloud, and it was migrating those workloads over. We were mindful of the cost, but at the same time, priority was to be able to take advantage of the latest and greatest in the cloud. And in parallel to that, we actually did license a commercially available tool that helped us decompose those costs. We were just talking about how it's important to share those with the business units so they know what they're spending and how much they're spending. We have a motto on my team that's spending money in the cloud isn't bad, but wasting money is. And that's really something that we live by, and tools help us do that. Now, we quickly outgrew that tool that we had licensed, and we actually built our own. So we do ingest data from the cloud providers, and we're able to use some of their native tools and inject a Capital One opinion on that data so that we can provide the right data to our engineers to make the right decisions, whether they be architectural decisions, data retention decisions, modernization decisions. We're able to overlay that over top of the data that we get from our cloud providers so that we encourage those correct actions and get the outcomes that we're looking for.
And obviously you're using a FinOps framework. I wonder if Craig and Vipul are using a FinOps framework from Linux Foundation or another organization.
Not really on our side. No, we pretty much go with the tools that are available. And
Yeah, same here.
So we don't, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously with that framework, it's meant to be a guide. And it's not necessarily meant to be the exact recipe for all companies. It's meant to be a way to get you started. It's, you can take pieces of it that work for you, and there may actually be even pieces of it that you are doing today, but you don't have to take the whole thing.
Okay.
It's what works for you. You can use those pieces and leave the rest.
And how has your prior experience in the cloud led to new negotiation techniques with the cloud vendors on costs? Do you find that you are heard by the cloud vendors?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think absolutely yes. Look, our cloud providers, and not just providers, they really truly are partners. They give us a lot of resources. They give us engineering resources, architectural resources. They help us with our development teams. And believe it or not, they actually are, they are looking out for our best interests of saying, how do you do these things efficiently and optimize them and not waste away? And in fact, they, oftentimes even come to us and say, you have more opportunity if you just do these things. And so I think we have a really, really good partnership, with our cloud providers and our partners. And I'll also add just where we are in this journey of new technologies, and especially Gen AI coming out, the providers don't necessarily have all the capacity themselves. So because they're limited on their capacity, they actually need us to be efficient as well, because they're still trying to catch up and build up to the demand that's out there.
And I'd agree with that. I think the foundation is important. Learn your cloud environment, how to run it. Because all this AI stuff that's coming, you're now going deeper, and you have to even get deeper in the roadmaps and the outcomes, the tools, and all that stuff too.
And do you two find that you have the budget for some of these generative AI projects as a result of some of the cloud costs coming down?
We do. We made it it's actually a strategic imperative for us as a company. And we have a 4-pillar strategy in using Gen AI and just AI in general. It's to help our sales teams, it's to help our developers, it's to help our service teams. And then, of course, it's to introduce the capabilities into our products. And we've already, as recent as 6 weeks ago, announced some of the capabilities that we're introducing into our products for our clients to use. So for us, it's a strategic imperative. So with that coming, it's kind of like we put the effort behind it. We've created the budgets to get this done.
And Craig?
Yeah. For us, the cloud. It's funny. The costs aren't the leading indicator of the problem right now. But because we have a really good grasp of the cloud consumption model, we can closely monitor this. I think better than we could have if we just went into it cold.
Yep.
But the use cases are more important, and the tools that we can approve, working with legal and security and the IT teams to make sure that those are taken care of so that we focus more on the outcomes and the use cases. And sure, costs will become something, but it's like a business case at that point.
Okay. And on your front, how have your efforts to reduce cloud costs on several levels enabled you to do innovation in machine learning and also in automation?
Yeah, so over time, like we've had a similar perspective in that it's about enabling customer experiences and how do we do that in the most cost effective way? Because the more efficient we can be with our spend, the more that we can do in the cloud, the more innovation that we can take advantage of and create better and more real-time customer experiences. So over time, we have put in place methodologies that allow us to really understand how much are we using of the cloud that we've provisioned and take steps to reduce that so that we can reinvest that money in things like machine learning, things like bringing real-time experiences to our customers. And whether it be machine learning or whether it be other just great customer experiences through the web, through our mobile products, we've taken a lot of steps to make sure that we can reinvest a lot of these savings into those that really gives the customer what they're looking for in their baking experience.
Thank you. Now, are you finding that the increasing number of SaaSes being deployed in-house is compounding the cloud cost issue? And if so, how are you managing the SaaS sprawl?
There are continuing to be more and more SaaS products that we use, and which is great because there are other products that are very focused in what they are delivering. And if we can take advantage of those as opposed to building our own in many cases, it gives us a leg up and it gives us more of our internal capacity to invest in some things that are very unique to Capital One. Something that's interesting about the cost of those SaaS providers is that the data comes to us in different ways. But the same principles apply in that it's important to socialize that with the business so they know how much they are spending and on what, and are there opportunities to actually be spending that money more efficiently? Is it combining things? Is it changing our strategy on how we are using that provider? So we put in place a lot of chargeback, showback type capabilities in order to give that visibility that allows our business then in turn to make the right decisions for their experiences.
Okay. And Craig and Bibble, same question for you. Is SaaS sprawl compounding the cloud cost problem, or do you feel like you have it under control?
I don't think we ever have it under control. I think it's something we always try to manage best we can. I think it starts with an inventory and making sure you're aware of what is connected and that it's got the right security hooks and things like that. Costs don't always hit your IT budget. It might be somewhere in the company, but it's still the company's budget that you have to be mindful of. We also encourage the curiosity type thing to try things to get perspective of, but we also know that can kind of work against you at some level too. But we try to strike that balance.
Okay.
Yeah, we also have a lot of explainability and transparency in where those costs are. And so for some very large SaaS agreements that we've done, they've been very thoughtfully done. They've been negotiated for multi-year deals. And again, it really had to use the word thoughtful. We've thoughtfully gone into these and prepared them and done them. But we are, again, we're monitoring them, we're watching them. And we're putting a lot of transparency around the costs themselves. So we know what we're spending on, where it's going, and that we are spending our dollars wisely.
And thank you. And in terms of cloud cost, is that a factor when you're deciding, and I'm sure you've already decided, which generative AI platform you're going with? Now, just, of course, coincidentally, all of the cloud providers also have extensive AI platforms and machine learning platforms. But there are also, great startups. We all know Databricks, C3 AI. So how do you make those decisions? And are you going to have a multi-gen AI model agnostic policy going forward?
So I can answer for us, simple answer to your question there is yes, is that we're actually using multiple different models. We are using We are using cloud providers to give us those capabilities. We're actually doing things privately, so we're getting our own instances. We're not using public services. We are using they're hosted with our cloud providers, but they're private instances for us. We have an extreme amount of care that we do with our data, and we have a lot of sensitive data, so we always have to put privacy at the top of that. And the reality right now is we're early. It's early days. We want functionality to work. We want things to work. We want things to be great. Once again, same thing with the experiment, as I said earlier, the experimentation. Once we get that experimentation going, we have a better understanding. We'll go then talk about the cost. But if we were to first drive with cost, I think we would actually constrain our innovation. So we need to explore. We need to be innovative. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. See which ones do well, and then we'll go back and afterwards come back and optimize.
Okay, thank you. And what we are seeing, interestingly, is that the enterprises that have decided to move forward with Gen AI, they're becoming software providers, and they are offering these services and functioning as software companies. And I'm wondering if all of you see that as a future key revenue direction for the companies.
I think it has to be at some level. Quite frankly, I think when I look at history, it pretty much predicts the future in a lot of ways. And if we looked at when the internet started, some of us might have been old enough to remember. I know I am. It was email and file transfer for the most part, right? And then the internet became e-commerce and social media and a bunch of other things, right? And I think in this space, it's too hard, or it's probably too easy just to say, okay, it's a cost thing or it's a tool thing. I think everything is fair game, and you got to pay real close attention to the cloud providers, the platform providers, startups, and even the non-traditional players. We're seeing, OpenAI talk about video creation, movies. We're seeing Adobe focus on music creation and things like that, which kind of tilts your head a little bit. So I think the key is to be very open, because we don't know where this plays out. We just know you have to be part of it in some way.
Yeah, just to piggyback on, Craig, what you were talking about, this is an area that is continuing to evolve, and it's evolving at such a rapid pace. Thinking back with the history, there's definite markers in the technology history that you can really see as evolutionary, and this is another one. And I think what would be a good strategy for almost anyone is to stay ahead and stay up on all the things, but also be nimble. Be ready to pivot, be ready to change, your strategy. Has a lot of impact on how much you're going to spend in the cloud, but that's okay. That if you've appropriately planned for that cloud spend, what specifically you spend it on actually doesn't matter. You can pivot, be agile with your strategy, and ultimately be able to solve not only your business needs, but your customers' needs as well.
And there are a few, I would say more, not the majority, but the few pioneers that have moved very aggressively to kind of get a jump ahead. But is there some wisdom in sort of holding back and waiting to see what happens in terms of moving forward with generative AI to see if the cloud costs will come down by the vendors in order to enable the innovation? Are you looking at those strategies?
Yeah, like as Craig referred and Ann both referred to looking at the past. I mean, if we look at technology trends from the past, things start off at a certain price, and then as the supply gets greater, as more entrants come in, as more innovation occurs, the price goes down. So I believe that we'll be on that same type of a curve. So it's early days today. That's why things may seem expensive, but they will get less expensive over time. For us, we want to be at the early end, the forefront of that innovation cycle rather than come later. The one thing I will say though, that we made it a really, really, really important point for us was to first establish an AI ethics board and have AI ethics standards, as we're getting into anything around AI. It's senior executives internally, and we've even brought in some external folks to be part of that so that we keep the bias out. Because we have to make sure that as we implement AI, that we're not inadvertently introducing bias, that we're not inadvertently doing things that don't make it, basically good for everybody. And so for us, if there was one thing we said, here's the first thing we need to address first is like, look, we have to address our AI ethics first, get that board set up, have our AI ethics board set up, have that committee set up. Now let's move forward. And as a company, we did that very quickly, and now we're moving forward with our AI initiatives.
Yeah, we did the same thing. I think the governance is the key. You got to get the governance working groups, the legal, security, IT, even just to share what the challenges are so we all get on the same page, because we all come at it from different angles. And then once you get that, you can then go to pivot to tooling that we feel good with, that we feel, we can monitor, we can govern. And then that just opens up the idea of all the use cases that you can start to embark on. But if you wait until the end to get those teams involved, you're going to be doing a lot of backtracking.
Right. And Vipul, we're talking about the supply, and over time, history has shown that the supply will increase. I also believe that demand will decrease as well. Like we're in a period now where there's a huge rush to consume. And a lot of that is driven by the whole scarcity mentality, in that, these GPUs, TPUs are scarce. So we're going to consume as many of them now as we can because we might not get them later. And there's a little bit of that going on. And I think that there's going to be not just demand there, but from a company standpoint, some folks are going to bow out, that they're going to do their experiments and decide this isn't for them, and they will continue on with their business strategy. And some companies will decide this is for them, and they will continue to consume. But I think that is actually going to be a pivotal moment in the cost of generative AI infrastructure. When those two things kind of come together and create their equilibrium, I think that the cost will meet the demand. Whereas today it might not. We might be paying a bit of a premium, but over time it'll probably even out, and be great for all of us because it'll create a much more level playing field and not be as big of a barrier to entry as it is today.
Yeah, and I'll actually add to that. I think even right now, there's understanding your workload. And then let's just take the example of, let's take a GPT 3.5 model and GPT 4.0 model. One is far more, it may give you better results, but it's far more expensive than the other. And we found certain workloads that the GPT 3.5 model work perfectly fine. So right away, we've got an opportunity to optimize by using that model because we didn't need the power of 4.0. So I think even those are, some of these things are in play right now.
Some have said that the indemnification policies offered by the cloud providers is giving them some ease and willingness to open the gates. Can you talk a little bit, give us a little hint about, what you have ready to go? Do you have Gen AI apps ready to go and they're simply just being held back because for legal issues and or because, the U.S. does not have its AI Act completed yet as the Europeans do?
I'll take a shot at that. I think that's still a work in progress, and that's why you got to get those governance groups together, your ethics council, everything together up front to really make sure you're looking at things holistically. And then when you do experiment, you got to make sure you know where the data is coming from. So if it is from the outside in, okay, do you have the right acceptable use policy in place so that people don't put intellectual property in the tool itself and then expose the company? And then other times you restrict it depending on the use case, but you got to get that all ironed out with that working group committee to make sure you understand what kind of use cases and tools that you can use in all cases. And to be honest, it's so rapidly moving. I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll read something different, and that might affect how we look at use cases that we have in process right now.
Yeah, with us, we're moving ahead. We already have apps running and deployed internally, and we already have apps and capabilities running and deployed in our products for our clients to use. So both an internal and external view. Our path has been to choose to have our own private instances of the capabilities, right? So yes, they're hosted with our cloud providers, but they're private to us. So we're not bringing in other data. It's our curated data that's going in there. And we're not using, I'll say public facing, open things where if we put stuff out there, like in chat GPT and say, summarize this for me, that's not going out in the public domain because we're keeping in our private instance.
Can you share what other cloud cost issues are running around in your mind that we may not have covered? Other issues?
I think data. The biggest one out there is data. You need to have data, and you need to have clean data. You need to have it may not be structured data, but you still need clean data. And there's a combination of structured data and unstructured data. And the reality is that you need lots of data for many of these models to work well. So data is actually a very large cost that has to be considered. It's not just about the compute and the GPUs, but the data itself too.
Yeah, the data aspect of it is super interesting because in the cloud, you can store an incredible amount of data that you actually couldn't store in your data centers because you ran out of space. And having clean data that is not duplicate data, that you're not paying for more than you need to be paying just because you can, is really important. It's also going to help in the future when we get to these AI models, because your output is going to be as good as your input. And I think, Vipul, that's where you're going with the having clean data, because that's going to matter a lot. The other thing that I think is really important is to think about not just how much you're spending on the cloud, but also the value of the cloud. There's a little bit of a difference between spend and value, and being able to convey that's actually really hard. They are dollars and cents that at the end of the day you're looking at, but that's value that you're spending on. So how you think about that value is important, and how you translate that into something that means something to your business units. And it may be different for each of those business units, the lens that they need to see that spend and value through. So thinking about looking at your cost, not on a snapshot by snapshot basis, but what does that mean? So if you think about the cost to serve, cost for a widget, cost for a capability that you are serving, and looking at that over time is actually going to help you quite a bit in determining that value. Are you spending the money on the right things? And is that cost actually coming down and you're serving more? Or is it going the opposite way and you need to pay attention to that? So I think that thinking about your cloud spend in terms of value as well as that spend is something that's going to be really important as we all try to justify how much we're spending on the cloud.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of them, data and then the value. But, one thing that we're keeping in mind to watch for the future here, because we haven't seen it play out, but we expect it will, is the network. And if you don't pay attention to the network, you will have bottlenecks. And right now, most of the consumption and utilization is in the cloud, but it's got to go somewhere. And I think post-COVID, when people are thinking about their network designs and all that stuff, we really have to think about that to come, although it might not be hitting us in the nose right at this moment.
Right. Are you talking about networking for a multi-cloud environment?
Yeah, what we're seeing is some of the cloud providers are now offering free ability to move out of their cloud so you can have choice, which is a first. It's a really good thing to be able to say I have choice, but the reality is we've been locked in by the network because it's often the bottleneck. You can't just drag and drop, petabytes of data. Then you layer in AI, and I think there's a lot of concern that this will become a bottleneck kind of type of situation. So, we're a networking company. We're thinking this way, of course, in our products, but we have to be thinking about the infrastructure that we have to make sure that we're consuming it where we need to consume it best.
Well, we've reached the end of our questions. Thank you all very much for your input. It's been really, really insightful, and we do appreciate it.